Right, so before I start, I just want to talk a little bit about Esprit, obviously. Nice audience. I think everyone has probably seen some of our stuff, but didn't necessarily know it was us. What do we do? All we do is design and build bespoke digital solutions. We start with a blank sheet of paper. You can have literally anything you like in any technology. We integrate it and literally are completely agnostic on all the components. So you can have any screen, you can have any PCs, you can have anything you like, as long as it works with a screen, either in LCD or in LED. And we literally install and support our solutions all over the world. And a big part of our offering is keeping these things running, and that's what I'm going to be talking about mostly. Back in the early 90s, our Roadside Billboards, which are the big red LEDs underneath what became Clear Channel's 48-sheet backlight estate, we think that was the first digital out-of-home network in the world. And when we did the London Underground Escalator screens, that really moved things on for the advertising world. The London Underground was quite a dangerous place. People didn't want to advertise on the walls. You had a lot of local companies going on there, and we completely transformed that by putting screen networks on the actual escalators themselves, and having all kinds of clever technology in there. And once literally virtually out of the box, these advertising opportunities were being sold for ridiculous money, and that became the industry standard for metros. We've subsequently gone into 5 other European capital cities with the same technology. Currently working with big mall owners, Westfield, Eki, Hermes, airports. We do all of the UK airports for digital. Lots of tourist attractions, London Eye, London Bridge City, O2, and now, after not doing retail for a long time, we've now started up again with some really interesting ones. Harvey Nichols in Doha Festival City, Tesco's throughout the UK, Dixon's and Virgin Media for not just advertising, which is obviously the primary driver because these toys tend to be quite capex heavy, intensive, but also for information. So things like wayfinding and kiosks and things like that. So just to put a bit of meat or a bit of colour on it, these are the escalators. I'm sure a lot of you have seen these. You've gone up and down the escalators. It's our signature product. The reason it's so important to us is because it was the most difficult job we ever did. And to do it first in LCD meant that everything subsequently has been relatively straightforward. How do you keep, I don't know, up to 100 screens in an escalator shaft that's 3 stories underground with no air conditioning, and in the summer in Oxford Circus Station you've got 100,000 people a day going up and down these escalators generating an enormous number of BTU. How do you keep them cool enough to run? Well, that's the special sauce. That's what we do. And the proof of the pudding is they're still working 12 years later after we put them in. And these are some of the other places that we've put them: Vienna, Oslo, Prague, Network Rail. We moved on to digital posters. You can literally have them in whatever format you like, and you've seen that the ones in the airports in particular have lasted really well. All different screen sizes, mostly large format and mostly portrait. We take that a little bit for granted now, but back in the day that was a very big argument. The landscape ones, as you can see on here, are in the arrival sills on the baggage belts. They're really nice as well. Use a couple of NEC 46s with backlit Duratrans on the side in a really nice stainless steel casing. The retail ones I was telling you about, Virgin kind of brought us back into it because they were a late entrant onto the high street in the phone business, and they wanted to make a big noise against some huge competitors. So you've got Vodafone, you've got EE, all with 800 shops and stuff, and little Virgin came into the phone business and wanted to make a noise straight away. So we put screens in the window. There were 2 of these 49-inch LG based shine-out screens that go either side of the front door, and then we wallpapered literally the ceilings, the floors, the walls, everything with screens. They had no paper in the store whatsoever, and it became, you know, a very key part of their offering, not just to the people who were coming into the store, but for anyone going past. So if you're on a bus, and obviously you don't need to go and see your new iPhone 8 or whatever it is, you could just take the voucher code from the screens as you go past the shop, and it was driving lots of traffic to the website. DOOH Festival City, we've spoken about that before with Tim and Jamie. This is a really interesting set of installations using all kinds of formats. The LED in particular was really something new on that scale, I think. If you look at the landscape one on the what we call the bulkheads, that's a really nice piece of work because it's set into the existing infrastructure, and for maintenance we've got a very clever gas tilt structure where the whole thing lifts forward and the engineers can get in from behind. I love the new tiles on the what we call the runway that goes out to the new leisure area at the back, and you can literally, with this new LED tile that we've developed, you can literally wrap any kind of space, any shape and any size, and it really is effective. As you can see, these are the new Westfield information desks that we're just bringing out. Okay, some of the outside applications we've done around the world, there's some interesting, very far flung. So you've got Columbus, Ohio over there, Playhouse Square. I've got 30 of those very American looking boxes that they like, down to the latest one, which is the Boston ones, which are here in Fanny Hall, went in last week, for information directories and advertising on the same screen. Some of the others you might recognise, the London Eye's biggest attraction in the UK. And one of my personal favourite is the Olympic one, which is the bottom ones here, where obviously the LED, nice and clear, reasonable resolution in the Olympics in 2012. But the best bit for me is the actual box itself. So we design and build that whole thing. It's about 1/2 a tonne of billboard on 3 pins. And this was retrofitted, so it literally matches the environment that it went into. Key technology advances, well, as I say, when we did the escalators, various things didn't actually exist, and we used to have to broadcast to screens in those days. So we used the first ever solid state media player in order to the screens could be updated 24/7. It had never been done before. Each of the screens on the underground was polling the server every 18 minutes for new content. And it gives enormous flexibility, not just for the advertisers, but also for the maintenance, because obviously if a screen wasn't responding, we'd know literally there and then. Heat management, that's our big thing. I'm going to come on to that, as well as some of the certification that we had to undergo. But the wow factor came, if you look at that one up there, it didn't exist, what we called image flow, where you could transfer the screens as you're going up the escalator. We launched with Rocky, running up one side through the screens, turning around at the top and coming down on the other side. We take it for granted now, but trust me, in 2004, people were going around in rush hour, going around the escalators up and down to see the ads, causing chaos. We had some security issues on the first couple of weeks. This is the factory. Right, reliability. This, I think, is the main theme. Starts with design. As I said, that is key. If you get the design right in the first place, then you've got every chance of making a reliable solution. And to do that, you need the right components. And unfortunately, unless you've had experience, or you've underspec'd, or you've just believed the manufacturers of the components instead of actually having tried and tested ones, they're going to fall down. The metalwork, we do all this in-house. It's really key that you get it right. And going back again to kind of the wall-mounted and escalator situation, if the metalwork wasn't perfect, then that job would have cost probably 3 times as much to install. So the screens themselves are relatively cheap, but the install process and the metalwork was the expensive part. And because we only had 3 hours to install them between kind of 1 AM and 4 AM, you had to make sure it's right, because if you're a mil or 2 out with 100 screens on a wall, by the time you get to the top, you might as well start again, because it would have just been a dog's dinner. The special sauce I was mentioning, the thermal dynamics and heat management, that's absolutely key. How do you keep these boxes cool? We have various proprietary cooling techniques inside the box, including air filtration, which is another key part of it. You can't have condensation building up inside your solution, otherwise, again, the screens aren't going to be performing at their maximum. And we've got a brain inside each one called a Cortex. And this Cortex is probably our most important ingredient. It's a little box that we're on version 5 at the moment. And this Cortex controls the backlight of each of the solutions. So obviously you don't necessarily have to have it blaring out at night. You want to have it controlled down. I know this has been around for a long time, but what's key with this is actually keeping the actual screen working for longer than its intended life. We normally get a 2 or 3 year warranty from most manufacturers, which we increase to 5 years. And in some cases 10 years, especially on the LED. And how we do that is a mixture of keeping the screen running well within its tolerances and keeping all of the electronics cool. Remote diagnostics is become absolutely fundamental. How do we not visit a screen in Perth, Australia more than once in its lifetime? And that is the key. And how we do that is, again, through a mixture of our Cortex and Intel AMT normally, stuff like that, where you can reboot any screen, one side, other side, both sides, anywhere in the world, because sometimes they need rebooting. That normally gets rid of 90% of the problems. And we've even got a situation now where we can reflash a BIOS on a PC anywhere in the world. And the whole thing being absolutely key is we don't visit those screens. It can all be handled remotely via our NOC in north of England, because we're looking after something in the region of 15,000 screens 24/7, 365. They're everywhere around the world. And the last thing we want to do is have an expensive engineer going out of hours into a site and dealing with large format screens. It's expensive, much more expensive, obviously, than looking after them remotely, which is pennies. We call this always-on technology. There has to be literally a power cut to the site for any of these screens to go blank. They're always showing content, right? They may not be updating it, but we can get around that through the remote diagnostics. Some of our installations, this is the first use of Quividi on a mass scale in a mall environment. This was huge. This was nearly 40 malls in Australia. Westfield decided to basically go from static paper to digital in one go. They decided to determine their advertising contract on January the 1st, 2015, and by March the 31st, the advertising contractor had to take all of their static panels out, and on April the 6th, we were live with something in the region, I think it was 1,350 large format screens throughout Australia. And literally we did it with 3 teams. It was a massive undertaking, probably the biggest of its kind ever undertaken. And the way we did it was by flat packing all the technology. So the screens came in, I think these were Samsungs, and they came in from Korea. All the metalwork, all the technology and everything was tested and tried and built in the UK, flat packed, went to each site location and was built, and we got it down to, I think, 36 minutes per pod. And the best example was in Bondi Junction, which is the big mall in Sydney, where the mall closed at 8 o'clock, and by 10 o'clock the next morning, it was open. It was all paper advertising the night before. By 10 o'clock the next morning, they had 83 pods live, double-sided, all working, and people coming. It's completely transformed. These are the ones for Elan, for the Mall of Qatar, installed by AVT. These are actually probably my favourite pod, even though I know they're in the room. It just is a really nice pod. It works really well. Jamie and Tim have already told you that the numbers are good, and the proof of the pudding is they want to roll them out elsewhere. It's as I say, double-sided 70-inch using an NEC panel. It's got intelligent LEDs on the side that can change colour with the advertising or the content, should it be required. Backlit logos in the bottom, and obviously Quividi installed. The latest network, this is what we're going to be coming on to in a second. This is the Westfield Smart Screen Pod, slightly larger format, 75-inch, and you can see at the top there you've got the camera. Which is obviously Quividi enabled. This has got the smart sensors. I don't know if you can see this sensor in the bottom here. This is a really good feature, because one of the problems big infrastructure has and the advertisers have is they're paying big money, and once they've been in for a couple of months, they tend to become a bit like wallpaper. People kind of ignore. I'm talking about the staff now. Tend to ignore them, and they put shopping trolleys in front of them and rubber plants, and suddenly the advertising is getting blocked, and no one wants to be giving any money back. So this sensor basically emails the manager of the centre, and in Westfield's case it's quite draconian, because the managers of the centre were getting emails saying, you know, there's a load of trolleys in front of the screen outside of Costco or wherever it is, and if you don't move it within the next half an hour, the advertising money is going to come out of your wages. True story. Yeah, some of the other new features on the Westfield pod. These are some of the malls. Went 20 malls throughout America. Again, they made the decision: no paper, transform to digital quickly. We did it. It was a bit of a challenge, but it all went in nicely. And this is how they're selling it. Apologies for the hideous soundtrack, but I think we get the point. What's really interesting about this, especially with Quividi, with regards to Quividi, is that Westfield are actually selling it on the audience measurement first. And I don't know of any other big network around the world of digital that's done that. They're saying, you know, these are the features that we've got, and it's not just about the venue and how many people are coming by. It's literally how many people are interacting with these screens that is the key driver for them. And the proof of the pudding in this case has been that you know, they've anecdotally got their money back literally within the first 8 to 10 months on the network going in. The future. Okay, so everyone's seen Minority Report, I've no doubt, and we're all hoping that doesn't happen, that dystopian view of society. But what is going to happen, what's going to happen with the screens themselves is they're going to get bigger. No two ways about it. There's going to be more sizes, more displays per location, because again, you can take your infrastructure and you can put a couple of pods in and a bit of LED, but you might miss the main audience. What seems to work, and I know this sounds very salesy, but what does work is people getting really excited. Wow, you know, that's amazing. There's pods, there's screens everywhere. We're being assaulted, and the screen manufacturers are having to catch up with this. They're going to be brighter, better contrast ratios. It's going to be a clearer picture. You're all seeing higher resolution stuff, lower power consumption. This is getting back to the point made by Frank earlier. You know, how do we keep the planet green? Well, the screen manufacturers, like everybody else, are being targeted. You know, with keeping the power consumption right down, and it's great because the running costs are that much lower as well. Longer MTBS, what does that mean? Mean time between failures. So there are failures. Anyone who tells you they're in electronics and things don't go wrong, unfortunately, is not telling the truth. They do go wrong. How you respond to them is what sets you apart. We normally have a screen availability target of over 99% of any given time. The screens themselves are always on, as I've said before. It's how we talk to them remotely that counts, and how we keep them updated round the clock. And of course, Lower pricing. As you all notice, newer people are coming in. ISC is bigger and bigger every year with newer people coming into the market, because every time the solutions come down a few £1,000s every year, right, it brings more people into the equation. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago for the big retail show, and they ended up getting something ludicrous like 40 or 50,000 American retailers coming in looking at screens, and that's never happened before, and that's all down to the fact that, you know, the prices are now, you know, a big factor. They're coming right down. New features that you may or may not have heard of. Electronic ink is it's a little bit left field. It's coming. You can print literally straight onto paper with the ink, so that takes away the need for an actual screen box and stuff. You can literally almost paint or spray a wall and end up with a screen on it. Glasses-free 3D. Now, this has been around for a bit. It's been talked about a lot. We showed it in New York, the newest version, and the optical illusion is you're almost walking through the ad, and previously you've needed glasses and now you don't, and that's kind of a big thing because it just didn't work in your home TV market. I think they've almost ditched them now, the ones where you need glasses to experience it fully. Gesture-based interactivity is another one of our favourites. Some countries in the world, some cultures don't like touching the screens themselves. Kay's smiling because he knows what I'm talking about. There's a hygiene thing. There's heat. If you put them in the desert, you know, these screens the glass really warms up. How do you get around it? Well, we've developed a suite of gesture-based tools that basically allow you to point at any area, zoom in, zoom out, and it's really something. Some of our customers I've spoken about before, some of the ones that we have been working with for literally over 10 years. And that's it. That's what I got for you. If there's any questions, be happy to take them.
As part of the future trends, do you see people interacting with the voices, with the screens, in particular in a mall environment?
What do you mean, Olivier? Someone coming up and talking to the screens?
Yeah, tell me where the washroom is, or where would I find pants?
Yeah, as long as it's as long as you've initiated that you know, that interaction. And it isn't, you know, you're walking past and it goes, oh, hi, Olivier, you're looking sweet tonight, you know, it's about time you got a new shirt, that kind of thing. That wouldn't go down that well. We did try that, and it was a spectacular failure. But I can definitely see, I can see a situation where you would go up to it, not interact in the traditional way and just say, hi, you know, I need to get to Boots. What's the quickest way from where I'm standing? You could, you know, they'll tell you, show you in a very clear, concise way. Someone could be pointing, or you could get a little printout even of a map. Definitely.
Do you have any other questions? Peter, is there any market that is specifically innovative? Like you work across the world, right? Is there any market that are like very advanced that we should look at as a benchmark?
Listen, the whole thing's moving really quickly. I'm delighted to say we're all in an industry that is growing year on year, and it shows no signs of slowing down. The financial modelling that you've heard about in the previous presentations is hugely exciting. You know, we're after the newspaper money and the TV money and everything else, and it could really explode. Part of it is that infrastructure owners and their advertising contractor partners know now that digital's here. You know, it was an argument almost up to 5 years ago in kind of England and America and Europe. Now it's pretty much endemic. You're going to need a digital network if you want to take the premium dollars. Is anyone adopting technology faster than anyone else? No. The world's a tiny place. Everyone attends the conferences. Everyone sees the new technology out there. There are people that will push it a bit further. Very interested to see what happens in America. I'd like to answer this question again, perhaps in 6 months, when, you know, the Westfield model of selling by audience measurement and by interactions rather than by venue. I think that will be a key test.